what we do different, we take into consideration not only credit score, but all other things that someone has done in their lives. It could be high school transcripts, military transcripts, in an attempt of giving credit to people that normally wouldn't get if you were just looking at credit scores. And before that, I was doing my MBA at Columbia. And before that, I did most of my career in investment banking, M&A. I went to Columbia to try to change things a little bit, try to leave the advisory role and get more into the real world. So I have done 4 internships at startups during that period, and now I'm at Meritize.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Ben, you want to share about your startup and how you got there?
Sure. My name is Ben. I am a co-founder of Clout. We are a fintech startup that allows businesses to impact their customers' credit history and drive retention. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm Haitian, Ghanaian, first generation, born in America, and went to Rutgers University, did 2 years in iBanking at a couple of boutique firms in New York. Joined a startup in 2014 called Boom Financial, which is one of the early venture-backed neobanks. We did international money transfers from Miami to Haiti and mobile banking in the state of Florida, and moved out to the Bay Area in 2016. Still working for Boom, and over the last 5 years now, been in fintech, and last year decided to start Clout with my co-founder, and then just been trying to start this company up, and it's been a wild ride, fun ride. We've raised about $140,000 since we started last year, and we're just continuing to get some proofs of concept going. So looking forward to connecting with you all here today too as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. We had a bunch of questions submitted beforehand, and we'll go through those, but then also please, anybody here, feel free to, you can drop a question in the chat, or if you're comfortable, you can just raise your hand and I'll let you ask it live. But first, I think a real obvious question is, each of you kind of had a different start before in startups. And so Justin, you were at Amazon, Isabel, you had the advisor role, and Ben, you were at Boom. I would love if you could each just kind of walk us through like why you made that transition and the whole thought process, and how you're liking it so far versus what you had been doing.
Sure. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So I was at Amazon before this. And I guess throughout my whole career and for my life, really, what I'm interested in is kind of like using technology to impact the world. And so I enjoyed the job that I was doing, which was essentially kind of predicting how many fulfillment centers Amazon needs to build. But I think when you're at a larger company, it's harder to have as much of an impact on a personal level. Like at a startup, you can, number one, like the amount of things you're learning in terms of skills, like just for me, like web development and backend and data engineering, like in the last 6 months, I've learned more than I did in my 2 years at Amazon. But also like more than just like going deep on one subject, you also get exposure to so many other things, right? Like I've gotten exposure to marketing and product and like how you build a company culture. And I get to have impact on those things, right? Like one of the things we're thinking about is, are we going to stay all remote forever? Or are we going to be like a somewhat synchronous company? How do we deal with different time zones? Like everyone's working in different places. And like I get to have as much of a say in a lot of ways as the founders do in terms of like what our company is going to look like. And so I think just like the amount of learning at this point in my career is like invaluable, and also the opportunity to like have an impact, to feel like, you know, even though I'm not the founder, this is like my company, and I'm really proud of it and the work that we're doing.
That's awesome. I love that kind of the ownership and all the things that you get to learn. Isabel, what about yourself?
So mine was a little bit different. So I was doing investment banking, and that was back in Brazil, where I'm from. I have been doing that for almost about 5 years, and I was perfectly happy. I was meeting very interesting entrepreneurs every time. And I was just curious, like, is there more to it? It's like just my role ended when the company had received a big investment, or a founder has sold the entire thing. But I was never able to experience what happens next. What do you do with the money? How do you transform and really make things happen? And to be perfectly honest, my intention when I went to Colombia was to shift into private equity. And I talked to, and my former boss told me, if you want to work at a private equity, I'm going to introduce you the best guy you could ever talk to about that. So he introduced me to the chairman and a partner at General Atlantic. And this guy was like, why? Like when I entered this industry, like 30 years ago, it was nothing. And I really saw it grow and become something. But today, like it's going to grow. Yes, it's going to change the world like it was before. No, it's not. And you're telling me how passionate you are about making things happen, seeing things happen. Your role is going to be very similar, to be perfectly honest with you. And he said, haven't you considered like working at a startup, something like biotech, we're just raising this fund, blah, blah, blah. I think that's going to be more, it would be better for you. And that got me thinking, and I changed my entire MBA at that point. I decided to at least experience a few startups before really going to private equity. So I did my summer internship and I did a few other internships at startups, and I just loved it. It was, I think that was the real thing I wanted to do. I wanted to really see the impact I could make either in a company or with the customers. And it's a little recent for me. So that's been the last year or so, but I'm loving it. I'm just having a ton of fun and really enjoying.
That's awesome. Thank you, Isabel. What about Ben? How about yourself?
Yeah, I had an interesting journey into startups. So I went to Rutgers, and when I got there, I realized that it was a non-target Wall Street school. So just kind of had to open up cast a wide net to like build a network and just kind of cold emailed everybody, and I got into the few boutique investment banks in New York that wanted to give me a shot. They were pretty much like internships, and just learned everything. And I was working with smaller clients because we were a smaller firm, and just started meeting startups. And you know, like it was interesting. I talked to Isabel. This is someone from Brazil, actually. I was talking to them, and they looked at my resume. They were working at Carlyle Group at the time, and they looked at my resume. And I told, and we were on the phone, and I told her that I spoke Haitian Creole, and she was like, "How come you didn't put that on your resume?" And I was like, "Oh, I just assumed that it wouldn't help me professionally." And she was like, "Well, you have to lean into your uniqueness." And like at that point, I realized that I was just being kind of like someone from a non-traditional background. I was trying to conform versus like highlight my uniqueness. And she was like, "Put on Haitian Creole, like you know, lean into your third language. I speak English, French, and Creole. Lean into the third language. If somebody from a target school has English and French, you'll have a third one to kind of beat them out, and you have a great story. You'll be able to have the conversation and highlight your uniqueness to get through." And at that point, I realized like I really have to like kind of hone in on that uniqueness. And I just started Googling Haiti and venture capital, and that's when Boom popped up. And then my client at that boutique investment bank happened to know the chairman of Boom, and then yeah, that's how I got my intro. If I wasn't just kind of knowledgeable or insightful or mindful of my own uniqueness, I would have never found Boom. They were literally the only VC-backed startup that had anything to do with Haiti, and they just followed them. And sure enough, somebody ended up making an intro to them, and maybe that took about like 6 months to a year to actually get that intro. And it wasn't me like actively, like cold emailing Boom. It was just like working in my job and just making sure that I just capitalized on or highlighted my uniqueness to the right people, and it kind of just worked out. And then from there, fintech just started booming. So I just been in the space since, and I've been learning so much. Did everything from BD, partnerships, product, compliance, operations, and met a lot of VCs. And in 2020, it made the most sense to become an entrepreneur and become a founder.
That's awesome. And in case you didn't see in the chat, Ben, Marlene mentioned very relatable. She's also Haitian.
Yeah, I can tell by the name. That's my grandma's last name.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And so one of the submitted questions was actually very similar to this, which was just advice on transitioning from academia to startups. And I know, Ben, you touched a lot on this because Boom was was something that you did soon after Rutgers. But then I don't know if Isabel or Justin, there's anything you want to add in terms of making that transition, if there's things you were working on during college that you think were helpful and like prepared you well for doing what you're doing now?
I think obviously if you can try to do a summer internship, like a product related to whatever industry you're looking for. If you know an industry, I didn't, but some people have a industry that they really want to enter. But I think at a startup, we're always trying to figure things out to understand the customers, what works, what doesn't work. So I think if you have no experience, I would try at least to think, am I a consumer for this product, for this service, or something similar to that? Because even those little experience as a consumer, they can help you build your case and show that you can think of like your thought process, how it works, how you can help them. If you find like things that could be better with that product, things that will make you consume it more or be more interested, like those are always topics that I think sparkle the conversation with someone working at a startup. So I would use those if I don't have any experience.
Love that advice.
I'll piggyback off that answer, and like it kind of goes back to like understanding or being mindful of my own uniqueness. So I recommend, one, everybody do that, and two, just trying to understand what problems that you've experienced and try to find businesses that are solving those problems. And that's kind of like what I wish I would have been a little bit more mindful of if I was in school. Just like, I met Boom 2 years after I graduated, but like once I heard about them, I immediately understood what they were trying to solve, because like, international money transfers, I never sent money abroad, but I watched, like my grandmother, my mom send money to Haiti. So like I knew it was a headache. And that's kind of like what drove me to kind of be in fintech too as well. It's just like, there are so many problems that as, immigrants and first generation born Americans and things like that we face. Like fintech is an obvious solution to that. And now I just have to understand what fintech is, but I totally understood the problem from, my own unique just perspective. It just kind of just watching the world around me. So like I would really hone in on the problems that, you've experienced or like are passionate about, just more broadly speaking, and look for companies solving those things and try to find roles that help you at least, if not impact or solve those problems, but like learn what you need to learn to get into those roles that help you solve the problems you're passionate about.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's both of those are super great and observant. I don't have too much to add there, but I think specifically tactically, like I think startups, especially young startups, are a great place to build experience. So when I was at university, actually, I worked for free for a couple startups, which was great because I started coding in college. Like I didn't have a big software engineering background, but so like my first semester as a computer science major, I was like way behind everyone. And I joined a startup and started working for free for it. And by my second semester, I was like ahead of pretty much everyone. Like it's a great way to get experience. And there is always so much work that people need done. Like if you can, message a founder and say like, hey, I can make your life a little bit easier by doing a little bit of graphic design for you on the side, or writing some copy for you, or, like working on a website. Like I can't promise I'll be fast, but like I'll learn it. I think that's a great option. The other thing I will say, and Isabel and Ben, please tell me if I'm wrong on this. The thing that I've observed is generally like younger startups tend to, like if you're being hired, want someone with like a little bit more experience. So I would say if you're looking to like go into a startup right after college, like a Series C or D startup is probably where you'd want to start looking, because like Series A and B startups have like 10 to 30-ish people, and they seem to like want you to have some more experience because they don't want to take a risk on that. So I would say like young startups, great for building experience, and then like Series B or sorry, B onward for like actually getting a job at a startup.
That's a great point. And a lot of that is also driven by, if it's such a small team, there's nobody to really mentor you. And those are some of the benefits you get for at a later stage company. It's definitely something to keep in mind.
That is absolutely the case too.
And it kind of dovetails with a question Marlene shared in the chat, which was she's interested in working at a startup, but she has an opportunity to attend a great grad program, and she's just trying to get advice on, would you recommend going to school beforehand? Is there value going out of to the grad program first, or what would you recommend? And I know it's everybody's situation is unique, but I guess general advice or would be helpful. I don't know if any of you have a particular view on it.
Well, if I'm thinking about my MBA, I can tell you, for me, it was super important to have experience before, to come there knowing what I knew about investment banking, M&A, because that was what I wanted to do after I finished my undergrad. And so the MBA was the opportunity to reflect on that. So I wanted to do that. I'm doing it. What next? Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And it gave me the opportunity to explore other careers, meet very interesting people who were doing things I didn't even think it was possible before. So that was very interesting for me. I had a few colleagues there who were straight from the undergrad into the program. What I can say, I think the benefit for them, like if they were looking into breaking into, I don't know, maybe anything, but they will start at the same place as maybe I would, or someone, like just because you're living the MBA at the same time, you're somewhat competing for the same type of roles. So that could be a way to speed up your career a little bit. Obviously, like in my case at Meritize, they took into account my experience. So even though it was a post MBA, they look at my experience and they said, okay, we were hiring an associate, but given your level of experience, this has to be a manager or above. So they made it work for me in that sense. So it really depends on what you're looking for. But if you are unsure of what you want to do next or what you want to do for many years to come, I would try to have a little bit more experience before going back to school.
Yeah, I would second, or I guess third, all of that. I got into startups 2 years after school, and then just been in Series A and B type startups for the rest of my career until I started my own. And to Justin's point, like the mentorship is very, very limited. So like for me, like I basically made the decision: do I want to get an MBA or do I want to just like go after this on my own, like through these small startups? And looking back, it was a huge risk. I wouldn't even recommend it on anybody. It probably would have made more sense to get an MBA and like try to get a job at a Series C or B plus type startup. But I have to say, like, what I've learned, I don't know if I would have learned it in an MBA too as well. So like I didn't make the wrong decision. I made a tough one. But like I think if you want to be a founder, it's probably, and if you know what problem you want to solve, it probably makes more sense to just jump into the problem. But like if to Isabel's point, if you're a little bit unsure as to which direction you want to open up as many options as possible, like the grad school route is definitely it, because the network you're going to get through that is going to be huge. Like that's just the bottom line of a grad school. It's like you you're really going to increase your network so much. I mean, like I increased my network through just like literally brute force cold emailing. And if you do the startup route, you have to be mindful that you're not going to get a network on it just by default. So you have to go out of your way to do that. And yeah, I think it's just, you have to just kind of, it's like a Venn diagram. You have to understand, like, just kind of see where the, or like a matrix. You just have to understand like the opportunity cost of paying for the MBA versus, diving into the problem, like just kind of a little bit more naively, or like, do you want to, kind of extend the network and have more options to go through recruiting cycles and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. The one thing I would add is it depends on you too, right? Like if you're sure at some point you're going to want to get like an MBA or a master's in finance or something, like go for it now. I don't think there's that much risk. But what I have seen in my, like watching my friends and myself, like go into our first jobs out of college is like the job that you think you want in 5 years out of college is not necessarily the job that you actually want. And, having 2 years of work experience is really helpful in figuring out kind of like what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you all. Marlene, I hope that's helpful. If you have any follow-ups, definitely feel free to throw it in the chat or let us know. We had a couple more good questions come in. Helen was asking if there's any advice on how to find startups that are hiring online, besides the Odyssey job board, of course. Would any of you have any tactical advice on finding jobs?
I think.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Just for like the smaller startups, I would just like follow TechCrunch and then like read the companies that raise, and then like literally just cold email, like just ping the founders on LinkedIn or something like that, and like just keep cold emailing. Like it really works. If you'll send, you might send 100 and you'll get a job out of like one job offer out of that if you just literally randomly email founders. Some of the more established startups will their VCs will post jobs on their websites. So like if they've already raised like Series A, B, maybe C even, or I should say C, B, and A even, they're definitely their VCs in those articles will post those jobs on their job boards, on their landing pages.
Yeah, Kevin just posted Crunchbase. I also like that one, especially because you can like use filters for your region or industry of interest. See competitors of a company, because if you're interested in this one, maybe there are others doing the same thing. That could be a way to increase your target list. I also used a little bit AngelList and LinkedIn. LinkedIn also works. I agree 100% with Ben. With sending a message, to the founder, do not be intimidated by someone's title or the number of years of experience that they have. And to be honest, I think you have better odds of getting, not to getting a reply, but to actually getting a job when you go at someone a little higher in the hierarchy and this person gets interested by something you said. Going to a peer is always easier, but to make it like this conversation climb and transform into a job, it works obviously, but the other way sometimes is a little easier. And because people get intimidated by co-founders, by those things, sometimes they don't go to these people, they go to the peers, and sometimes works, at least worked a few times for me. And I think the last advice I would give on those in this hiring process is act fast. So if like maybe writing a cover letter or something is gonna demand another week, or like go with what you have and go fast, because most of the time the jobs that are opening or the problems that this person have, they are just in time. Like if they posted, it's because they need someone immediately, and they are not. It's not like banking or consulting where they are gonna give 2 months so that they see all the resumes that came in. Your resume, the first one, is good enough. They're going to interview you. If you're good, you're going to get the job. And if you wait a week to make the perfect cover letter or the perfect video, maybe someone else got hired and maybe you were more qualified than them, but it was just a timing thing.
That's a great point on acting quick. And I just want to reiterate something Ben mentioned, which was looking at what companies raised. And it's really important because right when a company is fresh off raising capital, then they're most likely going to be using a large percentage of that on hiring. And especially coming out of college, you'll be on the cheaper side of the hiring, and they're much more likely to be able to take you on as an employee. So I would definitely focus a lot on who's raising. There was a go ahead.
The last thing I'll add, Brian, is that, and I mentioned this before in an Odyssey specific like content, is like, you know, network with intent, you know, like know why you're reaching out to somebody, what you want them to do, and ask them for it, you know, like, so you know, like I think a lot of folks, they're you know, to Isabel's point, like you have to have the confidence to ask, like even if there's not a job posting, like don't be uncomfortable asking that person, hey, look, I need a job, and here's what I can do and why I think I should do this at your company. Like to have total confidence in asking, and you know, like know why you want to speak with somebody, know, you know, what you can do, and ask for it.
Exactly. And Cassandra had a question that was very much along these same lines, which was, once we find a few startups that align with our problems, how do we go about reaching out? And if we choose to cold email, who do we email? And I think we touched on this in that last question, in terms of should be either the LinkedIn message or the emails. And Isabel was talking about just reaching out to the founder and not being intimidated. Maybe at a later stage, if it's a bigger company, there might be a different, more specific manager that you'd want to reach out to. Do any of you have anything specific to add to that, or I think we kind of covered it?
I would add use try to leverage your personal networks as much as possible. I went to Rutgers. I cold emailed everybody who went to Rutgers. I didn't care if they were a lawyer, a banker, a private equity associate, or like a startup founder, VC, whatever. I emailed them and said, I'm interested in learning what you're doing. And I always ask for another intro after that. So like start with your immediate networks and then work bottoms up from there. Another intro. So like at one point I was networking with people from Rutgers a lot. And then I can't remember how exactly I came up with this idea, but I was like, all right, well, like I'm networking with these folks from Rutgers because I went to Rutgers and they went to Rutgers. But there are schools like Rutgers. So I started networking with like folks that went to like Temple and Penn State and UConn, and they were receptive to talk to me too as well. You know, we had similar non-traditional journeys into banking, and like I actually got my first role from somebody I targeted because they went to UConn, not even somebody that I targeted that went to my school, like my alma mater. So that was how I broke in, was just like kind of like I got some like critical mass within the Rutgers network, and I was like, well, there are other schools like Rutgers, let's go to that too. So like just try to use your personal network and build on top of that, and then use all the other tactics like LinkedIn and just understanding what you want to do and then asking and having the intent once you've actually had a few conversations with those folks.
Awesome. And if you didn't see it in the chat, Ben, Milena's at Rutgers right now as well.
Oh, amazing.
So there was another follow-up that was along these same lines, and if we do reach out, is there any tips for personal branding? And I think, Justin, you touched on this a little bit in terms of like, if you think you can be helpful to the startup, telling them how you can be helpful in your outreach. And I don't know if you want to expand on that at all in terms of, in the context of personal branding.
Yeah, sure. I'm not exactly sure about personal branding, but I will say my one biggest piece of advice is like, demonstrate, if you can, what you can do for them, and show that you care, right? Like these people will get a bunch of emails probably. Well, I actually don't know if that's true, but like they're much more likely to take a chance on you if you say, hey, like I want to work on graphic design, and I think, you know, like I could improve your logo. Like, here are a couple logos that I did for you. Or, you know, like, hey, I'm really interested in product, and you know, I saw these YouTube walkthroughs, these YouTube demos of your product, and here are the things that I can improve, right? Like, maybe that's an old version of the product and it looks nothing like that anymore. But like, the fact that you took the time to show that you care is one of the things that like you can really use to distinguish yourself, as especially like as a student, right?
I love that. Isabel or Ben, do you want to add to that at all? Or
No, I agree 100%. I think sometimes it could be hard to making, like, I'm not a graphic designer. I'm fresh out of college. I don't really know what I could add here. But showing that you care, I think it's still important. So even if you don't have that one thing like the logo or something that you can't like immediately do or offer to do, at least showing that you know what the company does. Like, if this guy has been on the news, if they gave an interview, if they participated in a panel, so try to hear what they're talking about, what are their concerns. And if you can relate at least a little bit to that, or show them that you saw that piece of news, you read that, and you thought of this, maybe this is a solution for him, or like, I don't know, anything to at least show that you understood the company, you understood, like you did a little basic research. I think that is it's the least you can do if you don't have like that one thing to offer, like from the start.
Yeah, I think even asking good questions, right? Like, think through the business of it, and like, man, it seems like it would be a really hard problem to solve, that, you know, this part of the business, like, how do you transfer money to people who don't have phones, right? Like, and then ask like those questions to the founder, right? Maybe they have an answer, maybe they don't, but it shows that you've thought about the problem that the company's trying to solve.
yeah, I love that. Really unique engagement with their company and their mission and stuff. Awesome. We have a really interesting question from Elena I wanted to get to. We only have 7 minutes left. Do you feel like the freedom that comes with working at a startup comes with a lot more responsibility / room to fail? And do you have any negative experiences from a startup culture? It's a great question. I don't know if any of you in particular want to start on this one.
So I think like it's a scary sounding question, but like I think like in the startup world, like as an employee, I joined 3-4 startups really early on. Like, I didn't really have any like authority, or like I wasn't in a position to cause the company to fail. I think you can learn a lot even through failing. So like you do have more room to like kind of individually fail, and like, but it's kind of, it's not, as long as you're not the founder, like you really can't mess up even in the startup. It's like the founders drive so much, quite frankly, that like they're just, like, my job as a founder is to put my team in position to like fail fast and get right back up and keep going. So you do have a lot more responsibility and a lot more room to like personally fail, but like it sounds scary saying that word, because like you never, like as a like an employee at a startup, you'll never cause the company to fail. You might have to learn. I mean, it's like that in everything, you know, like you might have to learn a little bit, but like one thing I noticed was that like in the role, and it kind of made me want to be a founder too as well. It's like I was really in no position to, you know, really drive the company that much forward at the end of the day. Like that's kind of like what, you know, startups kind of pitch. It's like, you know, like you can really take control of the, you know, drive the company the way you, it's like you get a, like you're still going to get a project, you're going to lead it. And like, if something goes wrong, like, all right, but it's not, you're not going to like destroy the company or anything like that. And that's kind of just something interesting I've noticed in the last like 6 years working at, I joined every startup, like I joined one pre-series A. So like I've never really been even at that level, that you know, low amount of capital raised. I've never really been in a position to like, to be detrimental in a negative way to the company, even if I made a big mistake, which is something I learned while working and not like prior to it. And then, yeah, I think like in terms of negative experiences on startup culture, I'll just give you the perspective from fintech. Like fintech is it operates in banking and in finance, which is highly regulated, and it seems like startup culture is not one that is too mindful of regulation and compliance and things like that. So I actually, realized that not that many people wanted to do compliance, and I went and became a certified anti-money laundering specialist. So I always had a seat at the table, and it gets annoying when the culture is like move fast, break things like that, and people aren't really mindful of like the outcomes of that. Like I think it's more like build fast and pivot quickly. Like it's not really like you don't need to break anything to like build something. It's like you don't I think it's just like a lot, like especially crypto's coming out and like they're always fighting the government around regulation. It's like, well, you don't really need to fight them. Like you could just build it, and like if it doesn't work, pivot fast. So it's a little bit. There's a little bit of that in startups, and I hope it gets a little bit more balanced out, a little bit less cowboyish. But I think that's like probably the scariest thing. And I'm also a minority and a non-traditional start. It's still in the diversity inclusion is still a big problem in tech. So I think culturally, just more diversity will help startups more broadly speaking. Like the racial, ethnic, gender, sex, everything will be better if there's some more diversity in that regard.
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. You will probably not be in a position to ruin the entire company. And at a startup, you do have more responsibility. And I think you'll be better off trying to do something and acting than to waiting and do more research and being super careful. I think you have room to fail unless you really do something bad, like something related to ethics or something really crazy that nobody should be doing. I think you're gonna be fine if your projects fail, if your idea is not good. I think that's all for a game. And on the culture question, I haven't had any negative experience, but I must say I try to do my due diligence, and I think everybody should too. I know sometimes it's a struggle to not have a job when you wanted to have one, but like take your time and think it's better for you to wait a little longer and be at a place you like and you have a good culture fit with the company than to go somewhere just because you desperately want a job. So if like me, if I want to know how the company treats women, I might try, if I'm only being interviewed by guys, I could ask to speak with someone. I could check to see if there's a woman at a C-level position at the company. I don't know, but just make sure to, like, you're being interviewed, but you also need to know about that company, about that culture, about those people. So if you hate the person interviewing you, that could be a sign that maybe something it's not for you. I don't know. I take my gut on that thing, and I try to go to a place that really has a good fit.
Love that point. Justin, you want to wrap us up here?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think so. In terms of one of the challenging things is you have like a limited amount of information about the company. I think Isabel's point about doing your due diligence to the extent that you can is great. I would also say just kind of like trust your gut about people. These are people you're going to be in the trenches with. You're going to be interacting with them all the time. If something like rubs you the wrong way about how they're treating you or how you think they're treating others, in like your interview, it's unlikely that that's going to get better, and it's probably going to get worse. So be, I guess, mindful of that. The other thing I will say is in terms of like, I don't think you have much possibility to like ruin the company with any, I mean, maybe, but it's pretty challenging. I do think it's possible for a startup to not be the right path for you personally at a particular time. And I would say in particular, like if you need a lot of mentorship, right, then it's not necessarily a great fit for you. But if you're ready to kind of like, if you feel pretty autonomous and what you need in your career is like challenging problems and to feel that ownership, to grow, that's definitely like the best time to do a startup.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin, Isabel, and Ben. These have been awesome answers, and thank you to all the guests that showed up. Really important. I'm gonna send you all a post-event survey after this, and just please, it takes 1 minute to fill out, but it's really helpful so we can bring more events like this. And I just want to thank all the panelists again, and thank you for your time. And hopefully you enjoyed what we have here. And feel free to reach out to me if you want to get in touch with one of the panelists or have any questions or follow-up things you want to discuss. I'm definitely happy to connect. Thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Have a great one.
Bye, guys.